Hello everybody, today I am going to show you the important joints of the human skeleton. You know that joints are the locations where two or more bones unite or meet, and joints are the locations where we move our body parts. So joints are very important structures in the skeleton. There are many clinical conditions and diseases are related to the joints. So joints are very important. First I'll show you the important joints in the upper part of the body. So let's start with the skull. You know the cranial bones are joined together by the sutures, and sutures are the joints that articulate the cranial bones, and sutures are fixed joints, that means immovable joints. Then the occipital bone, which is in the bottom of the back part of the skull, articulates with the cervical one, which is the atlas. So atlas is the cervical one, first cervical vertebrae, uppermost vertebrae, articulates with the occipital bone, and this joint is called atlanto-occipital joint. Okay, so you will see that almost all joints are named after the bones they articulate or join. So we just add an O between the bones. So this is atlas and this is occipital bone, so this joint is called atlanto-occipital joint. Okay, and then this is called the temporomandibular joint. This is the temporal bone and this is the mandible. So the temporomandibular joint is here, also called TMJ. And you know that locked jaw, a clinical condition that is related to this joint. So this is the only movable joint of this entire skull, and this is the joint where you move your mandible. Okay, and then this is the clavicle, and clavicle has two ends, the sternal end, this is the sternum, so this is the sternal end, and this is the acromial end, and this end of the clavicle articulates with the sternum, so this is called sternoclavicular joint, sternoclavicular. And this joint between the clavicle and the acromion of the scapula, this part of the scapula is called the acromion. So clavicle and acromion, this joint is called acromioclavicular joint. Dislocation here or separation in this joint will cause dropped shoulder. So the shoulder of one side will be lower than the other side. Okay. So the clavicle forms two joints. Medial joint with the sternum is sternoclavicular, lateral joint with the acromion is acromioclavicular. Okay, and the joint between the ribs and sternum is sternocostal joints. Costal indicates or refers to the ribs, so sternocostal joints. Okay, and then the vertebrae are attached to each other by the intervertebral discs. You see the fibrocartilaginous discs attach the bodies of the vertebrae, so intervertebral discs. In the back, the vertebrae are attached to each other by intervertebral joints. So superior articular processes articulate with the inferior articular processes, and those are intervertebral joints. Okay, now we will see the shoulder joint. So here you see, this is the head of the humerus, and this is called the glenoid cavity, where the head of the humerus articulates. This socket is called the glenoid cavity, and it is a shallow socket of the scapula. So this is the shoulder joint formed by the head of the humerus and glenoid cavity of the scapula here. And this joint is a weak joint, and shoulder dislocation is very commonly heard. Now we'll see the elbow joint. So this is the elbow joint, which is formed by the lower end of the humerus and upper ends of radius and ulnar. So elbow joint is formed by three bones. Okay, lower end of the humerus and upper end of the radius and upper end of the ulna. Then if you go down, radius and ulna are connected by two joints. Here the upper end of radius and upper end of ulna are attached by proximal radioulnar joint, and the lower ends are attached here by distal radioulnar joint. Okay, so proximal radioulnar and distal radioulnar. Then the lower end of radius articulates with the carpal bones and form the wrist joint. So lower end of radius articulate with two carpal bones to form the wrist joint here. Okay, and then we have the joints between the carpal bones. There are 8 carpal bones, and they are attached to each other by intercarpal joints. Makes sense? Between the carpal bones, intercarpal. Then between the carpal and metacarpal, these are 5 metacarpals. So between carpals and metacarpals, those joints are carpo-metacarpal joint. And between metacarpals and phalanx, those are metacarpophalangeal joints. Okay, so these are metacarpals and these are proximal phalanx. So metacarpophalangeal joints. And between the phalanx, in your fingers, the joints are interphalangeal joints. Okay, so those are the joints you can see in the upper part. Now we'll see the lower part. Here you see the last lumbar vertebrae, 5th lumbar vertebrae is this one, and it articulates with the sacrum. Sacrum is this bone. So this is called lumbosacral joint, between lumbar and sacrum. Lumbosacral, we just add an O. And this is the ilium of the hip bone or pelvic bone, and this is the sacrum. So this joint is called the iliosacral joint. Same in this side, iliosacral joint. Okay, and then this joint between two hip bones. This is the only joint between two hip bones. In the front, this joint is called pubic symphysis. Okay, pubic symphysis. And then this is a very strong joint, the hip joint. Why it is strong? Because you see the head of the femur goes into the acetabulum of the hip bone, and the acetabulum is a very deep socket. It is not like glenoid cavity. Glenoid cavity is shallow. However, the acetabulum in the hip bone is very deep socket, so the head of the femur can very strongly articulate or held there. So that is the hip joint. And then this is the largest and most complex joint of the body. This is the knee joint. Okay, knee joint is formed by 3 bones. The upper bone is the femur and lower bone is the tibia. So lower end of femur and upper end of tibia, and this one is the patella. Those 3 bones form the knee joint. Okay, fibula doesn't participate in knee joint. Okay, so now inside the knee joint you will see three joints. These two are the condyles at the lower end of the femur, and these two are the condyles of the upper end of the tibia. So these two condyles articulate with these two condyles and they form two separate joints. Okay, lateral tibiofemoral and medial tibiofemoral. Tibia and femur, right? Tibiofemoral. So two tibiofemoral, lateral and medial, and the back of the patella or posterior surface of the patella articulates with the anterior surface of the lower end of the femur, and that is called femoropatellar joint. Makes sense? Femoropatellar. So two tibiofemoral and one femoropatellar, those three joints together form the knee joint. That's why it is a complex joint. Okay. Then we'll see the tibia and fibula. The upper end of tibia articulates with the upper end of the fibula by the proximal tibiofibular joint. Make sense? Proximal means towards the body. And this is distal tibiofibular joint. Distal tibiofibular joint. Okay. And then we'll see the ankle joint. So ankle joint is formed by the lower end of the tibia and the talus. The tarsal bone, talus, articulates with the lower end of the tibia to form the ankle joint. Okay. And then there are 7 tarsal bones, and the joints between the tarsal bones are called intertarsal joints. In between, intertarsal. Then tarsals articulate with the metatarsals. Here you see the metatarsals, and these are tarsals, so these joints are tarso-metatarsal joints. Okay. And then metatarsals articulate with the phalanx by metatarsophalangeal joints, and between the phalanx or toe bones you have interphalangeal joints. Okay. So those are the important joints in your skeleton.